When it comes to the topic of leadership, there are tremendous lessons to be excavated from each passage, from each verse, and each word of the Torah. The writings of the prophets also provide a depth of understanding on the topic of leadership. The opening of the book of Hebraic Chronicles is partially devoted to genealogy, which brings us to David's time. In the section about the tribe of Ephraim, at the end of the long list of names, we have a fellow named Nun, N-U-N. Nun has a son named Joshua, and he represents the termination of the tribe of Ephraim. What is startling for all of us who are students of Tanakh is that someone as heroic as Joshua ben Nun, a man who is central to our story, represent the end of a line? Did Joshua marry? Did he have children? We don't know because we are not told, but the text silence speaks volumes here. We have to figure out why it is that Joshua is presented as the end of a line. In reality, Joshua also appears out of nowhere. Yes, we do have characters in Tanakh that comes out of nowhere, but who also play critical roles. What comes to mind as a first example is Abraham. He is introduced to us in the text as an adult. We have characters that we watch grow up. We see Isaac grow up. We see Jacob grow up. And we certainly see Joseph grow up. We even observe Moses growing up. But to have a character as central as Joshua, we're given no information of where he comes from, except that we are told he's from the tribe of Ephraim. We are given his father's name, and then he disappears. Now, let's meet Joshua for the first time. Let's get the context first. We've crossed over the Red Sea. We have just had our second water crisis when Amalek comes to fight us. And then from nowhere we are told, Exodus 17, verses 9. So Moses said to Joshua, wait a minute, who's Joshua? No information is provided. No background is given. This is where he shows up. We are all familiar with the passage. Moses directs Joshua to put together an army to go to fight Amalek. Moses and Aaron and Hur go to the top of the mountain, and Joshua and his men fight below. The result of the battle is a draw, but Joshua comes out of nowhere. Who is he? He's later presented in several passages in the book of Exodus and in a critical passage in the book of Numbers as a loyal student and a loyal disciple. This is at Sinai when Moses comes down, hearing the sound of celebration in the camp. After that quasi-tragic scene where Moses wants to quit, and Yah commanded him to bring 70 men, and they all receive prophecy, we then hear about Eldad and Medad continuing to have prophecy in the camp after it's supposed to be over. We read that some kid comes running to Moses and reports the matter that Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp. Who's this kid? The text addresses him as Joshua ben Nun, Numbers 11:28. This is the first time we hear him addressed as such. For the first time, he's also addressed as Moshe's ministering servant. Joshua, the son of Nun, Moshe's servant from his youth. his suggestion to lock Eldad and Medad in prison is a bit problematic. So Moses gives his student a very quick lesson. You are jealous on my behalf because you have other prophets competing with my prophecy? Because other prophets were given their slots and these two went past their slots of prophecy? I wish that the whole nation would be prophets, says Moshe. That is what I wanted at Mount Sinai, for everyone to stand there and not send me ahead. You see, when Yah decides to put his spirit on someone and it incites jealousy, this is the wrong attitude. That is why Moshe tells this kid, Joshua, Ben Nun, in Numbers 11, are you zealous for my sake? If only all Yah's people were prophets, and that Yah will bestow his spirit upon them, we will find that Joshua is a very quick study. We are finally formally introduced to Joshua after all this time in what I think we can safely say is the critical episode of his life as a disciple of Moses. This is the episode we commonly refer to as the story of the spies or the story of the scouts. In the story of the 12 scouts, we are introduced to them by tribes. In verses 8, we are introduced to a fellow by name Hoshea ben Nun. But we've never heard of Hoshea ben Nun. Maybe he is Joshua ben Nun's brother. Maybe. When you look at the end of this particular passage in Numbers 13, it reads, these are the names of the men Moses sent to scout the land. And Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua. So now we can connect the dots. This Hoshea ben Nun gets a name change. Moses names him Joshua. So now the Joshua that we met back in the book of Exodus, fighting Amalek, the Joshua that was atop Mount Sinai, the Joshua who tried to get Moses to lock up Eldad and Medad, is none other than Hoshea ben Nun, the scout. Why is this note here? Why is this note not back in the book of Exodus? And why did Moshe change his name? Last time I checked, Hoshea is a very nice name, so why change it? Now, it's the custom, and we see it in Tanakh. When a person joins a court as a disciple or member of the court, they're given a name or a new name by the king. We see such with Joseph, who was named Zephanath-Paneah, which means the God has said he shall live. Daniel and the 3 Hebrew boys are given new names. Moses is given a new name. Moses is his court name. He was not originally called Moshe. Many people don't know this. In Hebrew culture, you give a name to a child on the 8th day. So on the 8th day, Moshe was given a name. The name Moshe came after he was weaned and sent back to the daughter of Pharaoh. That was when he got the name Moshe. So obviously the parents called him something. They did not call him Moshe. So Moshe is his court name. He was not originally called Moshe. When you take a look at the story of the spies or the scouts, there are 2 heroes in this story, Joshua and Caleb. Which one of them was vocal in his opposition to the other 10? It was Caleb. Which one of them took a stand? It was Caleb. Which one of them does Yah identify as having a different spirit? It was Caleb. And yet, he's not the one who gets chosen to be the next leader. Remember what Moses said to Joshua, Are you zealous for my sake? He was teaching Joshua a very powerful lesson about leadership, and Joshua evidently understood this lesson. When Caleb speaks up and goes against the people and stands on one side against everyone and earns the right to enter the land and inherit Hebron, Kiataba, by standing up against everyone, he also demonstrated his essential lack of fitness to be a leader. When Joshua understood that right now they won't be able to listen, he sits quietly and tears his clothes. He demonstrated understanding what it took to be a conscious leader. Proper leadership is the understanding that you don't lead without the people. And unless you can interact properly with the people, knowing the right time to say the right thing, so it is heard, you can't lead. I'll repeat that. Proper leadership is the understanding that you do not lead without the people. And unless you can interact properly with the people, knowing the right time to say the right thing so that it is heard, you can't lead. This was why Joshua was more successful than Moses. I'll explain why next week.